Vorthak had been hunting across 17 different worlds for over 3 centuries, and he'd never encountered a more pathetically defenseless species than humans. Their soft pink skin, their ridiculously slow reflexes, their complete lack of natural weapons or armor. Oh, how the Galactic Council had laughed when they'd first discovered Earth. "Look at these fragile little creatures," they'd said. "They can't even see in the dark properly." Which is exactly why Vorthak had chosen this particular suburb on this particular night. The street lamps cast long shadows between the houses, perfect for a being of his talents. His scaled hide shifted color to match the darkness, his forearms flexed silently, and his razor-sharp claws extended with barely a whisper. After all, what could possibly go wrong when hunting the galaxy's most helpless prey? The Morrison family home sat quiet and still at 2247 Maple Street. Vorthak had been watching for weeks now. Robert Morrison, the father, worked late at some meaningless human job. Lisa Morrison, the mother, spent her evenings absorbed in those glowing rectangles humans seemed so fascinated by. And then there was little Emma Morrison, age 7, with her bright blonde hair and completely trusting blue eyes. Perfect. Vorthak slithered through the backyard, past the swing set and the small garden where Lisa grew those colorful earth plants. The back door had one of those laughably simple human locks. A quick application of his plasma cutter, and click. The humans really made this too easy. He paused in the kitchen, his 4 eyes adjusting to the interior darkness. The refrigerator hummed quietly in the corner, covered with small colorful papers that seemed to display the child's artistic attempts. How quaint. How utterly, pathetically human. The stairs creaked slightly under his weight, but Vorthak wasn't concerned. Humans had such poor hearing, especially when they were in their vulnerable sleep state. He'd done this hundreds of times before on dozens of worlds. Slip in, acquire the target, slip out. Simple. Clean. Efficient. Emma's room was at the end of the hallway, just as he'd observed through his surveillance. The door stood slightly ajar, and he could hear the soft breathing of the sleeping child within. Vorthak's mandibles clicked together in what passed for a smile among his species. The collectors would pay handsomely for such a perfect specimen. He pushed the door open with the tip of one claw and stepped inside. The room was exactly what he'd expected from these primitive creatures. Stuffed animals scattered about, colorful pictures on the walls, toys organized in neat little containers. And there, in the small bed beneath a window showing the Earth's single moon, lay his prized Emma Morrison slept peacefully, clutching a worn stuffed bear to her chest. Her breathing was slow and steady, completely unaware that her life was about to change forever. Vorthak extended his collection device, a small neural interface that would keep the child docile during transport, when he heard it. A low, rumbling sound from somewhere behind him. Vorthak froze, his camouflage automatically shifting to match the new environment. His hunter instincts kicked in, all 4 eyes scanning the room for threats. There, sitting on a small cushioned chair in the corner, was the most unremarkable creature Vorthak had ever seen. It was small, covered in orange and white fur, with pointed ears and green eyes that reflected the moonlight filtering through the window. The humans called them cats, if his research was correct. Completely harmless domestic animals that served no apparent purpose except to sleep and consume food. The cat, which wore a small collar reading whiskers, stared directly at him. Vorthak almost laughed. This was the great threat? This tiny, fluffy creature that probably weighed less than his smallest weapon? He'd seen the footage of these animals. They spent their days sleeping in sunbeams and playing with balls of string. Hardly the stuff of nightmares. "Move along, little creature," he whispered in the human language, his voice translator working perfectly. "I have business here that doesn't concern you." Whiskers tilted his head slightly, as if considering this statement. Then, in a move that would have been impressive if it came from a trained warrior, the cat stood up, arched his back, and made that same rumbling sound again. Only now, Vorthak realized it wasn't rumbling. It was purring. But there was something else underneath that purr, something that made the hair on the back of Vorthak's neck stand up. It was the sound a fusion reactor makes just before it reaches critical mass. It was the sound of potential energy waiting to be released. Emma stirred slightly in her bed, and Vorthak saw his opportunity. He reached out with 2 of his arms, preparing to scoop up the child before this ridiculous furry obstacle could do anything about it. Whiskers stopped purring. The silence that followed was the kind of quiet that comes before a supernova, before a black hole devours a star system, before the very fabric of space-time decides it's had quite enough of your nonsense. "Thank you very much." And then, faster than Vorthak's enhanced reflexes could track, faster than his military-grade neural implants could process, faster than anything had a right to move in this supposedly primitive corner of the galaxy, Whiskers launched himself through the air like a furry missile of pure, concentrated fury. The impact sent Vorthak stumbling backward into Emma's dresser, knocking over picture frames and sending small toys clattering to the floor. Before he could regain his balance, Whiskers was on him again, claws extended, moving like a creature possessed by the spirits of every apex predator that had ever walked the face of any world. Impossible. Vorthak hissed, trying to grab the cat with his superior reach and strength. You're just a house pet. Whiskers responded by introducing Vorthak's face to the business end of his claws. The alien predator howled in pain and fury, his camouflage flickering as his concentration broke. This was not how the evening was supposed to go. This was not in any of his tactical manuals. This was not even theoretically possible according to every piece of intelligence the Galactic Council had on Earth fauna, and yet, here he was, being systematically dismantled by 8 pounds of domestic cat. The commotion in Emma's room had awakened something far worse than a sleeping child. Down the hallway, Vorthak could hear the heavy footsteps of Robert Morrison, and they were moving fast. But that was the least of his problems right now, because Whiskers had apparently decided that tonight was the night to single-handedly defend his territory against alien invaders. Get off! Get off! Vorthak snarled, swatting at the orange and white blur that seemed to be everywhere at once. His advanced combat training, his centuries of experience, his superior alien physiology. None of it mattered when facing a house cat that had apparently graduated from the same school of warfare as a blender full of razor blades. Whiskers latched onto Vorthak's primary arm with all 4 paws, his claws finding every gap in the alien's supposedly impenetrable scales. The cat's teeth, small but incredibly sharp, found purchase just above Vorthak's wrist joint. For a creature that spent most of his day napping, Whiskers was showing a remarkable aptitude for violence. What the hell is going on in there? Robert's voice echoed down the hallway, followed by the sound of a door slamming open. Oh, fantastic. Now the adult humans were getting involved. Vorthak tried to shake the cat loose, but Whiskers had apparently decided that letting go was not an option. Ever. Under any circumstances. Not even if the universe itself collapsed into a singularity. The bedroom door burst open, and Robert Morrison stood there in his plaid pajamas, wielding a baseball bat like some sort of primitive war club. His hair was sticking up at odd angles, and he had the confused expression of a man who'd just been awakened by the sounds of his daughter's room being turned into a battlefield. Emma? Emma, are you okay? Robert's eyes swept the room, taking in the overturned dresser, the scattered toys, and the completely invisible alien being systematically destroyed by his family pet, because, of course, Vorthak's camouflage was still partially active. To human eyes, it probably looked like Whiskers had gone absolutely insane and was attacking empty air with the enthusiasm of a berserker warrior. Whiskers, what are you doing? Robert stepped into the room, bat raised, trying to understand why his normally lazy cat was performing what appeared to be an interpretive dance routine titled Death and Destruction in B minor. Emma sat up in bed, rubbing her eyes. Daddy? Why is Whiskers flying? Flying was actually a fairly accurate description. Whiskers had managed to climb onto Vorthak's back and was now riding the invisible alien like the world's most violent rodeo. His claws were dug deep into Vorthak's shoulder plates, and he was yowling with the kind of primal fury that suggested his ancestors had once hunted saber-toothed tigers for fun. Vorthak stumbled toward the window, desperate to escape before the situation got any worse. His mission was compromised, his dignity was in tatters, and he was pretty sure Whiskers had just drawn blood from at least 3 different arteries, but as he reached for the window latch, something extraordinary happened. Emma Morrison, all 7 years and 42 pounds of her, looked directly at him, not at the space where he was standing. Not in his general direction. Directly at him. Daddy, she said in that matter-of-fact way that children use when pointing out obvious things like rain being wet or aliens being in their bedroom, there's a scary monster trying to hurt Whiskers. Robert spun around, his bat ready, his protective instincts fully activated. Where, sweetheart? Emma pointed directly at Vorthak. Right there. He's big and green and has too many arms. Whiskers is trying to save me. Vorthak's blood ran cold. How could she see him? His camouflage technology was military grade, designed to fool even the most advanced sensor arrays. But this small human child was looking right through it like it wasn't even there. I don't see anything, Emma, Robert said, but his voice carried less certainty now. His grip tightened on the bat. He's right there, Daddy. Whiskers is being so brave. And that's when Robert Morrison did something that would have impressed warriors across a dozen different star systems. Instead of dismissing his daughter's words, instead of assuming she was dreaming or confused, he trusted her completely. Emma, get behind me. Now. The 7-year-old scrambled out of bed and positioned herself behind her father, who raised his primitive wooden weapon with the kind of determination that had once driven humans to fight off predators with nothing but sharpened sticks. Vorthak finally managed to pry Whiskers loose and flung him toward the dresser. The cat landed gracefully, of course, because cats always land gracefully even when they've just finished demolishing an intergalactic predator's evening plans. You want to know the truth about humans? Vorthak hissed, his camouflage flickering as his systems failed. You want to know why we avoid your pathetic little world? His invisibility dropped completely, revealing his full terrifying form to the Morrison family. 4 arms, scaled hide, razor claws, and mandibles that could crush steel. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, a nightmare made manifest in a child's bedroom. Robert's eyes widened, but he didn't run. He didn't scream. He stepped forward, placing himself more firmly between the alien and his daughter. It's not because you're weak, Vorthak continued, backing toward the window as Whiskers began stalking him again. It's because everything on your world is insane. Your children can see through military-grade camouflage. Your house pets fight like demons. And your adults. Oh, your adults will face down creatures from their worst nightmares with nothing but wooden sticks and pure stubborn determination. He reached the window and fumbled with the latch, his claws shaking slightly. The Galactic Council was wrong about humans, Vorthak said, finally getting the window open. You're not the weakest species in the galaxy. You're the most terrifying. And do you want to know why? Robert and Emma stared at him, waiting. Because you don't know you're supposed to be afraid. With that, Vorthak dove through the window and activated his emergency teleporter, vanishing in a flash of blue light that illuminated the backyard for just a moment. Robert lowered his bat slowly, his heart still pounding. Emma, are you okay? I'm fine, Daddy. Whiskers saved me. The orange and white cat in question was already walking over to his food bowl, apparently deciding that defending the household from alien invaders had worked up quite an appetite. Robert looked at his daughter, then at his cat, then at the open window where an 8-foot-tall monster had just retreated in defeat. Whiskers gets tuna tonight, he said finally. Extra tuna, Emma agreed, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the Galactic Council received a message that would change their assessment of Earth forever. Mission failed. Recommend immediate reclassification of Sol 3. Reason, domestic animals more dangerous than previously calculated. Also, their children can see through our technology. Suggest we find a different planet to bother. The Morrison house returned to its peaceful quiet, protected by the most unlikely guardian in the galaxy, one very determined house cat named Whiskers.